All right, what's up? What's up? Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark here, GC Live again, and glad to be back on Thursday as we're recording and going live here, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and on our podcast. If you are listening on the podcast, then hopefully one day you can join us on our YouTube video. Obviously, podcast allows you to listen to it in the car and all that stuff. But I do think there is some added value to the video, and I think YouTube's the best place for it. But otherwise, no matter where you're watching or listening, happy to have you. Again, I'm Wes. He is Chris. And we did one, I think, to start the week, and doing one today, obviously. And then hopefully, I know we got some guys talking tomorrow. Hopefully we can get in maybe one tomorrow as well, Chris. But, so I had the chance to do the tour at Williams-Brice Stadium today, and then also probably while we're on the air, we're going to get the latest practice report from Steve Fink, who's done a great job, SID over at South Carolina, of keeping everybody sort of updated, considering the fact media hasn't been able to go. And then a second scrimmage on Friday, or excuse me, on Saturday, that we obviously will talk about much more on Friday. But Chris, starting just with football stuff right now, I would say it's been just sort of wouldn't you think it's kind of just been a by the book week so far? I mean, early on, you start to hear word of surprises and guys that are standing out. And then we had the first scrimmage, and I think we had some good stuff. I hope people think we did on Monday, just coming off the scrimmage. Now I feel like we're kind of hitting that little point of camp where everybody's sort of settling in. The players are probably getting tired of hitting each other already. The storylines are starting to play out. There's still some questions, don't get me wrong, but we're kind of in that little middle zone between the, hey, it's camp, let's get excited, and then in about probably, what would you say, a week and a half or two, we'll get in that, okay, it's like almost game week mindset. Right now, we're sort of in that little middle zone of camp right now.
Yeah, we're in the middle where, we got a decent feel of, how things have gone. Like you said, still lots of questions. I mean, there are some positional battles to play out, whether it's just some configurations, some backup battles. The quarterback battle, of course, is still going on. But we have been able to get sort of a sense of, what are some potential strengths of this team based on the first, since the calendar turned, to preseason camp. We've been able to get a sense of, some of the potential and perceived strengths of this team, maybe some areas of concern. How can the staff maybe address those areas of concern? Some personnel questions I think have been answered, but you're exactly right. I think we are at the point, and Will Muschamp's alluded to it a couple times about, just keeping composure as a team. And that can mean several different things, whether it's just handling adversity in practice. But another part of it, B, is, he's mentioned that the players, maybe are sort of tired of hitting each other. I think he mentioned that after practice one day when he was talking to Steve Fink. And so he wants the guys to do a better job of that. And, that's been interesting to me a little bit because he's mentioned it more than once. And so, this team, again, we talk, Wes, a lot about how this team, and some past teams, this one falls into that category. It's going to be a low margin of error team. Like, they don't have a lot of margins for error. And so, Will Muschamp's probably looking at that and going, we can't get, for example, a silly penalty. We can't get an unsportsmanlike. We can't afford those types of things. And so that seemed to be something that he's had eyes on sort of cleaning up. Obviously red zone work, situational stuff. They really seem to hone in and harp on that a lot because those are key areas that South Carolina has to get better in. But you're right. We got a pretty good sense for a lot of things right now. Still a lot of questions, and I'll be curious to see, how a lot of those play out between now and the opener.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I've picked up on a few things here and there this week that I think are worth mentioning post scrimmage. Some of this we talked about on Monday. With scrimmages, there are always guys, especially early on, you just sort of hold back. You don't give them a lot of reps because they're already older guys and they're going to be counted on. And, with that, some other guys have gotten really a lot of reps. I think that allows them to make an impact in the scrimmages. We mentioned, earlier in the week that Shi Smith was sort of one of the guys. I think they're limiting reps. That meant Luke Doty got, a lot of snaps in the scrimmage. I tell you one thing, Chris, I heard, I don't even think I've talked to you about this off air. I've heard there's been some Jalen Nichols at starting right tackle with Dylan Wanham taking some reps with the first team at left tackle. So, I think we sort of coming in is kind of interesting. We thought center was sort of the biggest question mark on this offensive line. The more you listen to Will Muschamp talk, the more it seems like they really like what they're getting out of Eric Douglas in practice. And we talked about that on Monday, but you remember Muschamp rolling off some guys on the O-line that he said, hey, I need a little more. I don't remember exactly what terminology he used, but need a little more consistency from some of these guys. And, I think Jazz Turntime was one of those guys. And we've thought since the spring, Muschamp said several times, hey, if we started today, this guy's our starting left tackle. But I do think they're continuing to tinker, to tweak. That doesn't mean that's going to be your first team group, but they are sort of looking at some other options there with having some different guys with the first team. And I think now is the time to do it. By the time we start getting into like a week away, I think you sort of want to know, at least for that week, right, who your guys are. But there is still some maybe maneuvering. We're just not seeing it all because everything is so shut down right now for good reason.
Yeah, and, we talk a lot and say in the secondary, we say this a lot, your best 5 if you're in nickel or your best 4 if you're in regular. And so offensive line, it's a lot of the same. Who's your best 5 guys? And we know that with Eric Wolford having cross-trained some guys, when you look at some guys that have gone on at South Carolina to go, play in the league that worked under Eric Wolford. I mean, Zach Bailey, he played almost every position at South Carolina along the offensive line. Donnell Stanley played guard and center. There are lots of examples of that. And so when you look at a guy like Jalen Nichols, he's played some different spots. Obviously, Dylan Wanham can play left or right. You got some guys. Eric Douglas has, I think, probably legitimately played every spot at some point, whether it's in game or in practice situations. He's repped even, at left tackle. And so, Nichols is a guy that played some last year. He helped them win some games. And if he comes on and if he's one of the best guys, then maybe you think about a way to get him in there, and so you're right. Maybe we came into this saying we feel like we know these other positions. One question was about how guard would situate, right? Because we felt like maybe there were 3 guys for 2 spots. Then Jordan Rhodes opted out. So that sort of, we felt might have situated that. But, there were some young guys, Ja'Kai Moore, Jalen Nichols, who are even capable of playing inside. So then that creates a little bit of a question. You got a few guys at center, but Eric Douglas, again, we've reported, Wes, Eric was the top guy coming out of spring. And it looks like so far he's held on to that. And they've liked his consistency and his toughness and his IQ, for the game that they like a lot. And he's been around a while. But tackle now, maybe that's a little situation to monitor. Now, is it something where they're just giving some guys some reps in case, sort of the just in case situations, or is it more, hey, we might legitimately go with this? But what we do know, man, is they've got some young guys like Nichols and Moore that if one of them really came on and showed, hey, I need to be on the field, then you might have to think about moving some things around.
Yeah, and like you said, man, well, first of all, it's a good quote problem to have. It's not really a problem at all. If guys are pushing, that's a good thing. And like you said, we're sort of in that stage where, we pick up bits and pieces here and there, and it's like the CIA gathering information. Like you get this, you get that, and then you try to make sense of it, right? So they do a lot of cross training up front. They do a lot of cross training in a lot of areas in this program, but that is one configuration that maybe has a little bit more viability than it seemed like might have happened early on, or it literally could be that they do a lot of situational work. It literally, a lot of time, I mean, I've heard of Eric Wolford talking about this in the past. Okay, boom, my starting left tackle goes down. You pull that guy and you say, what's the scenario? Who's next? Yeah. I think if we look and for whatever reason, let's say Jazz is the starter, but he has to come out. I think more than likely the scenario is Dylan Wanham moves to left, Jalen Nichols comes in at right, and that's sort of, your next man up. And some positions, it may be that at center, if Eric Douglas has to come out, maybe Hank Manos is your next guy, and it's just a direct replacement. Or sometimes we've seen them in the past, center has to come out, a starting guard slides over, and the next guard comes in. So they're always working these scenarios to where, it's not just like playing PlayStation where you just plug somebody in. You have to actually work these looks in practice, or you're in a bad way. If that happens in the middle of a game. So, a lot of that going on. I have heard, we've continued to sort of monitor the running back situation, and that's one that I think you look, Chris, and there's really, because I did a projecting the starters or here are the starters piece on defense earlier this week, and honestly, man, I probably could have written that in my sleep. Then turning around looking at offense, I'm like, there's still a number of ways some things could play out, and running back is the spot that very much could play in a number of different ways. And I think you're looking as far as the returning guys. You have obviously Kevin Harris, Deshaun Fenwick. I think there's been a sense from the fan base that there's been a little bit more buzz around Fenwick from the returning guys. Mike Bobo has said some really positive things about him the times he's talked. But then I keep hearing that Kevin Harris has been involved in taking a lot of first team reps. So you have a lot of things at play here. You have two returners, that haven't played a ton, but at least have been in the system, right? Have been in the program, I should even say, not even in the same offensive system. You have Zaquandre White, who still is maybe the highest upside guy, but is learning this scheme, learning this system, getting acclimated. Then you have the wild card of the bunch now, which is Rashad Amos, who really could, I believe, provide a spark at some point, and it's just a matter of how long is it going to take for him to get comfortable with everything. So with the question of, okay, who's your starting running back? Is it who's the starting running back if the season started today? Is it who's the starting running back on September 26th? Who's the starting running back a month and a half into the season? That actually could be three different answers potentially.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been one of those that shifted. Coming into this preseason, it was all right, who's behind Marshawn Lloyd? And then maybe how many snaps are those guys getting? Well, then it's turned into, all right, Marshawn's down now. Who's the main guy? So, so number one is health. When you look at running back, it's always about who's healthy, whether it's at the beginning of the season or it's sort of in the midst of the season. And you'd feel better if you had that running back room fully stocked, because then number one, you got Marshawn Lloyd, who's really, really good and was making a lot of noise in preseason and was going to be the top guy. But number two, then you've actually got five guys, on scholarship instead of the guys you've got right now. It is still a group that, I think could be productive. Is losing Lloyd a blow? Yes, because he was one of the most dynamic guys on that offense. We've talked about this, and they just are still searching for playmakers. So that's why, man, one in the aftermath of losing Marshawn Lloyd when he went down with the ACL injury, one of the first things that I think both of us heard independently was this is a big opportunity for Zaquandre, because he had shown some flashes early in preseason camp. But for him, it was going to be really what it is for a lot of junior college guys who don't, get on campus in spring, in January. It's, can he pick up the system? Mentally, does he know what to do? Because physically, he's got the ability. He showed it in junior college. He was a highly recruited running back out of high school. He signed with Florida State at a time where they were signing a lot of really good backs. And so he's got that ability. So it's a really big chance for him. So can he take that opportunity? Can he show that he can be counted on? I think he's the best chance to be your most dynamic guy. And that's going to be important for an offense who's looking around going, who's our most dynamic guys? But that said, they're still going to need consistency, and Will Muschamp's talked about that. Consistency with ball security is something he brought up with Amos. Fenwick is a guy that, it's been a sort of a theme throughout his Gamecock career where he would show flashes, but can he be consistent? It does seem like that he's had, even dating back to the limited spring practices, he's had some of his best practices, some of his best days since he's been in Columbia, where it seems like he's sort of turned the corner a little bit. It's been a really gradual progression for him. And then Kevin Harris he's sort of a guy that you know what you're getting, but the thing with him, the consistency for Harris is he's had some minor injuries at times. He had a sort of a major one last year during the season and then came back actually more quickly than expected, but he's had some minor stuff that's kept him out of practice at times too. And so really, when you look at all four of those guys, Wes, the question is who can be the most consistent guy and then who can make the most plays. So it's sort of that interesting push-pull, but I still think Zaquandre White, if he can show that he can be trusted, if he knows the playbook, he's the most dynamic guy in my opinion, and so that could end up giving him a leg up, but still a lot left, to play out there. I think it's going to be about the guy they can trust the most to be the most consistent.
And again, as you said, who can stay healthy, right? Who's the most healthy guy? And I think speaking in general, sometimes fans ask, well, why haven't we heard about this guy? Why hasn't this guy been mentioned? Even the O-line thing, the running backs, etc. Sometimes a guy isn't getting mentioned. Muschamp has mentioned that there are some guys who are banged up, no serious injuries right now, obviously other than Marshawn Lloyd, no new serious injuries coming out of the scrimmage, but there are some guys banged up. So sometimes if you're not hearing about a kid, that doesn't mean that he hasn't, that he's off the table, that he's not going to play, that he's not going to make an impact. Sometimes it's just that he's maybe one of those list of guys that is banged up right now. And obviously this staff is very quiet about injuries. They don't like a lot of that getting out. So sometimes you get the wrong impression if a guy isn't mentioned when it's really just he's missed a few days of practice because he's banged up potentially. So that's always something to think about. We have continued to hear from some players. Steve Fink, I actually thanked him today, man. I was like, dude, we really appreciate, because they could have just sort of left us completely in the dark, but they have been sending out practice reports. They have been sending out photos, and they've been doing videos. We had a question here, Chris. Did you watch the Xavier Legette video earlier this week?
Yeah.
And I love Xavier Legette. Seems to be a great kid, and he's been through I don't know if his story is necessarily out there, but he has been through a ton in his life. So you're pulling for this kid, right? But his goal for the season, I have to commend him for shooting high, because he said, 90 catches and 900 yards receiving. So if he does that, then my man has had a year, and he's all SEC. So well, he actually hit those numbers. I don't know. Who am I to say he won't? I'm not a negative guy. So, but I do appreciate, Chris, the high confidence in listing numbers, because this offense needs some confidence, I think.
Dude, if Xavier Legette or anybody, pick one, but if he catches 90 balls, we need to change our expectations for the offense. They'll probably be pretty good if that's the case. But and shout out to Graham Hatfield. He's been a loyal listener. He jumped in on our free trial recently. Hope you're enjoying it, Graham. He got himself an Aladia's gift card for that as well. I hadn't forgotten about it. I'm mailing it soon. 90 balls, man, especially like I thought of that number in the context of a regular season. And then I remembered that we're playing 10 games this year. And I
didn't even think about that aspect.
10 or 11, let's go for bowls or whatever. But let's just say it's 10 games. Then you're catching 9 passes a game. I mean, that's a lot. But, hey, I commend him. And, man, Xavier, I mean, you're right. It's been through a lot. He's a really, really talented kid. I remember when he got on campus last year, he's a late bloomer in the recruiting process. South Carolina really liked him, high school quarterback. And then he gets here. And I remember one of the first things I heard about him is he started making some waves on special teams. Like he went down to cover a kickoff, and just he was just there. Like if he was on a stopwatch, like the feeling was he would have put down a big time. And so they saw this big kid who could really run, but he's still learning to play receiver. He's got a lot of natural ability. He had some one-handed grabs in practice last year and stuff like that, but it was just about learning to play the position. Go back to that word, consistency, because this wasn't a kid who, played receiver all his life. He's just a big athlete. So look, what I put, and again, I'm not trying to be negative either, man, but what I put my money on, I wouldn't put my money on like a lot of established, like, some of the best receivers in the country going out there and catching 90 balls, especially in a shortened season. But I commend him for that. And that's great to have, that type of goal. I was trying to go back. So last year, I was like, what's a good, comparison on like how good of a feat that would be. So naturally I thought about LSU last year. I was like, let's go look at what LSU did. So let's see how many catches. Jamar Chase, who just opted out, he caught 84 last year, and they played 15 games. And they passed for like approximately, 7,000 yards or something. But Justin Jefferson caught 111 passes last year. 111 passes for 1,540 yards and 18 touchdowns. And yeah, that's just, is that even right? I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem right.
It doesn't seem right, but it is, because dude, that LSU offense, I've never seen a quarterback put more balls on the money.
Yeah,
like perfect coverage. Ball just drops in. I mean, I've never seen anything like you've seen some amazing offenses, right? Cam Newton just literally being bigger and faster on the field than everybody. So Cam added that, he looks like an offensive lineman, runs like a running back, and then by the way, huge arm as well. So for colleges, unstoppable, right? Tebow, some similar aspects there, but and to his credit, I think Joe Burrow was like a little bit of an underrated runner. Like he did it just enough. But dude, some of the passes this guy would make, and he had great receivers, had great coaches, obviously great passing game coordinator, but just the combination of it. I mean, talk about catching lightning in a bottle to be able to do that. And saying, I mean, nobody wants to hear about Clemson on this show, but Clemson's DBs, man, those are some talented athletes. And LSU's guys were still able to rip them in the secondary. So that's I mean, I don't want to say never, because college football will eventually someone will, but I don't think we're going to see an offense that finely tuned in a while, in a long time.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, and just so those top two guys with Jefferson, Jefferson caught 18 touchdown passes, and Jamar Chase had 20. It's just absurd. Who do you think? So I was thinking about this. Let's say Xavier Legette somehow got to that. Again, I do not. Please don't go on the internet or anywhere and say Chris and Wes are saying that Xavier Legette's going to hit that mark. Has anybody been close at South Carolina? What would your guess be, Wes? And I'm not looking at all time, but I've got a couple guys that came to my mind that I'm looking up here, and one is close.
One is close?
One is close, which I didn't know, wasn't sure about.
Sydney?
Sydney was fairly close.
So Alshon?
Alshon was the closest to that.
He had, I'm going to say, 77 catches.
He had 88.
80. Oh, okay.
2010.
Sorry, Alshon. 2010.
So, yeah, I mean, this is what I'm going to double check this figure, because I almost didn't believe it, because it doesn't. In 2009, he had 46. That was his true freshman year, of course.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I was thinking 2010 was his true freshman year for a second. I was like, he didn't even play till,
Game 4 or so.
Because Steve Jr. didn't want to put him in.
Right. So 2010, 88, and then 2011, 49. So it sort of dropped off a little bit actually, but Sydney had 70 in 2005 and 72 in 2006. And actually, his redshirt freshman year was even better because he only played 11 games. He had 70 catches and 13 touchdowns in 11 games. So just some historical perspective there on how, how significant that would be. I will go on record. If Xavier Legette catches 90 balls in any form or fashion, then the offense is a lot better than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And I'm pulling for him. I appreciate the high level of confidence there. Let's talk a little bit of recruiting. There was some recruiting news as Kyle. I think I've seen Kyle's name come across. So I appreciate the folks we see joining us, on a consistent basis. If you are new to the Gamecock Central YouTube, please hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom right. Like us and leave a review if you're on the podcast version or whatever. But and then I'm going to get to the Williams-Brice renovations. But Kyle, yes, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Gaffney defensive lineman, who, by the way, Chris, I didn't realize this. We have him as a 4-star on Rivals now. So did anyone tell you that?
Nobody told me until I just sort of saw it.
Yeah. So anyway, Tyrion, Final Four. I would say no surprises with the Final Four, right? I mean, those are sort of the four. Don't you think that we've heard the most about? Now, I would say Alabama was always one that I thought when they offered, they might get some traction. I guess never really happened. Obviously, no visits have been able to take place, but I don't think Virginia Tech was ever. I mean, that was a throw-in. You've heard Tennessee buzz. You've heard Georgia. You've heard North Carolina. I think North Carolina, honestly, he just likes North Carolina has done a good job of creating buzz in the Carolinas this class. Let's give them credit for that. And I think he probably has gotten caught up in that a bit. But for the longest time, Chris, for me, I've heard South Carolina and Georgia, and then I've heard South Carolina and Tennessee. And I think all three of those programs on any given day have actually felt pretty good and maybe still do.
Yep.
Which we see that from time to time. It makes for an interesting recruitment, but also makes it difficult to predict what's going to happen. So I'm curious to see how that one plays out. I'm curious to see, high school football, we all believe is starting very soon. Tyrion's talked about, I want to be done with the recruiting process soon. Now, he said that back in mid-July. So are we going to randomly see a Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins commitment before his season starts? I don't think you can quite rule it out. Now, to which school it might be is probably a pretty difficult question.
It has been tougher to track his because he's a guy that has enjoyed the recruiting process a lot. He has communicated with college coaches a lot. And just from what we've picked up, man, it seems like I think you hit the nail on the head that schools have had, multiple schools, mainly being Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, have had some reason for confidence. And typically when you see that, there's reason for it, right? And it happens with prospects a lot. Sometimes it's more cut and dry with other guys, but with someone like Tyrion, with his personality, with the amount of communication he has with the different coaching staffs and how much he enjoys the process, you look at social media activity, he's very active on social media. It can give coaches reason, and it can be very legitimate reason for feeling good. And so, for me, the way that he handled his recruitment was a lot different. But, I think back to Jordan Birch as a recent example of an in-state guy where we saw this play out a little bit, different fashion, because Jordan didn't say much at all about his recruitment, as we know. But there were a few schools that were in there sort of throughout the process: South Carolina, Georgia, Clemson, LSU. There were some others from time to time. And it was sort of like, well, it's South Carolina in this school, it's South Carolina in this other school, it's South Carolina in this other school. And all of them, if you remember from last recruiting class, we would hear a lot well, this school feels good about Jordan. This school feels good about Jordan. Now, were there legitimate reasons for that? Yeah, there might have been. So it reminds me of that just a little bit. Now, that one turned out well for South Carolina. I tend to think, and we can't know for sure, but I tend to think that a lot of what we heard seems very positive for South Carolina. And I think particularly when you sort of put it in light of that, other schools feel good, but South Carolina has always been that common denominator. And we've heard some more specific things too that, can make you feel pretty good about the Gamecocks' chances. But it is worth noting that Georgia's had some confidence. Tennessee's had some confidence. There were some mixed thoughts from people from different sources on what he may have done if he would have committed in the summer. And so I think that's worth monitoring. But definitely what I do feel confident in is that I think South Carolina's got a really good shot here to get Tyree on whenever he is ready to decide.
Yeah, and I think clearly someone, Chris, I think you start to look at this 2021 class, and believe it or not, you're closing in on the end of it, right? Like you're kind of focusing in on, I would say, two things: specific needs and specific players. And I think Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is one of those specific players that is absolutely a top priority for South Carolina. In some cases, just generally speaking, you're looking at, okay, here's 5 guys trying to fill 2 spots, and maybe you don't really care who fills it of those 5. I think in this specific case, he's been a major priority for Carolina since they offered. They've recruited very well on the defensive line. They've recruited very well in state. And you see a big athletic kid from an area that traditionally has been pretty kind to South Carolina, I would say. And they obviously want this dude to be a part of this class. And for those who are watching on video, I mean, you see it. He's a big kid who moves well and just fits the mold of what they're looking for on the defensive front.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that it's really been crazy, his progression from a size standpoint. At one point, it almost reminded me of like the older, like the Alex Huntley picks from back in the day, where he was just like a smaller kid who really just grew into this, 285, 290-pound man. And so Tyrion's a guy that, at one point you're going, maybe is this an end to me? And he's certainly been upfront about the fact that he thinks he could play on the end too, on the edge, and maybe he could in situations. But body type wise, he just looks like a potentially really good interior player. Now maybe he reshapes some and gets back down to that range and plays some 5 techniques, something like that. But I mean, this is a guy who's 290, 300 pounds, and still has a lot of athleticism, and he's got a lot of upside. You watch him move on tape, and there's some really intriguing things about his skill set, how he can split some double teams. He can take on double teams. He's got natural power and can really move. So that's why he's such a highly, touted guy, a guy that a lot of schools have, traditional powers down in the Southeast have really been after him.
Yeah, so we'll, of course, continue to track that and sort of see what direction it goes. But, who knows? I think it could be something soon, but frankly, we really don't know that yet. That's probably, I guess real quickly, Chris, you want to talk a little bit about what September 1st meant for class of 2022 guys. I know we haven't really talked about that from a show standpoint here, but that's a big day. That was the first day that the rising juniors target, can get contacted by coaching staffs, which always is sort of, that's when these kids sort of, okay, this is for real. These coaches really want me, and schools start to make sure the guys they want are very much known.
Yeah. So what you see on September 1st is guys who are in their junior year of high school can start getting, a lot of the edits that are so popular. They can begin to get those on social media from coaches through, normally the way they get them is direct message on Twitter. They can start texting with coaches. Coaches can text guys back. There's been some questions I saw on the forum about, offers and about whether or not coaches could talk on the phone. So coaches actually back in April from a spring window could place one phone call, to a junior prospect, and then that's it, just one total. So this date on September 1st doesn't have as much to do with phone contact. It's all about, sort of electronic text message contact and then social media contact. And so a bunch of prospects that we know are high value targets for Carolina in the 2022 class, got multiple, edits and talk with coaches over text, over DMs. So their first few days since the calendar turned to September 1st have really been devoted to that when the team isn't, practicing or meeting as a team in preseason camp. They've been devoting a lot of time to, hitting up some of these 2022 prospects.
Yeah. So, all right. Williams-Brice renovation. And as we're getting to this, Chris, I do believe as we're on the air, we actually have not gotten the football note yet, but we did get some football ticket information for donors, Gamecock Club, folks like that. Have you had a chance to read through this or look through this yet, Chris?
No, I was just about to get through that, but I have not yet.
So I'll give everybody the big picture, and that is, so basically, I think when they went to sort of look at how they were going to do this, first of all, the question was how many Gamecock Club members want to actually come to the games, how many want to push back, to the next year because they're just not comfortable. They're sitting out this year. So then, you essentially had to say, okay, if there's less room than people want that actually want to come, then you have to start to sort of split it up. And basically, if you look at the split up, it's going to be a lot of donors, then, some students, some players, families, and then I think a few opponents. So opponent fans, I mean. But right now, basically the way they split it up, you have a mini pack A, which is Tennessee, A&M, and Georgia, and a mini pack B, which is Auburn and Missouri. And they will be available exclusively to season ticket purchasers. Dividing the season into 2 mini packs allows season ticket holders to purchase their regular number of tickets for each game, while also ensuring that all season ticket holders will be able to attend multiple home games if the full season is completed. So I'm reading this sort of as we go, but essentially it sounds like the way they did this, Chris, was just this guarantees that if you want to go to a game and you are a season ticket holder, you're going to at least get to go to multiple games. They could have said, hey, let's package them all 5 together and do a lottery, but then some people would have gotten left out. So essentially, you may not be able to go to all 5, but at least you're getting to go to some. And I haven't read through all the fine details on this yet, but you can read that on GamecockCentral.com. It's probably everywhere by now. It's on Twitter, I'm sure, on Gamecocks Online and all that stuff. So, again, is that ever ideal? No, but that's 2020, and that's sort of where we are, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So, there were a lot of questions about – I think a lot of it, how it's played out has, with who was eliminated first, has sort of played out like we thought. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to sort of figure out that, hey, if you're limiting tickets to, say, when all this first started, you remember the number like 15,000 fans was thrown out. And so now it's going to be, about 20? It's about a quarter of the stadium's capacity. You thought, okay, they're probably not going to do away fan tickets. I mean, schools aren't going to get some big allotment of tickets. If there's away fans, it's going to be players from the other team, the visiting team, their families. And then, you're probably going to do away, or you're definitely going to do away with, public at large tickets. You remember in every other normal year, you get your season ticket holders, you get your away team allotments, all that good stuff. And then you might open up certain games for a single game, on sale to the public. So we knew that would go out the window because you're going to have a large segment of people who are season ticket holders. And then they had to figure out from there, okay, how many of those are either going to do the reinvest program and push things till next year? How many are going to stay in? One question I had going into all this was, like you said, Wes, are they going to package all the games together? Are they going to do a lottery for like every single game? And then, if you get one game, then you're out for one, all the other ones, or what is it going to be? And one thing I'd heard is they wanted to give everybody the opportunity to go to at least 2 games. those season ticket holders who wanted to opt in, so to speak. And so this accomplishes that. Obviously with 5 home games, you couldn't split it up any other way, but probably 3 and 2. And so that's where these sort of 2 mini packs go through. So tough situation for everyone, man, trying to figure out how to do this and all the moving parts for sure.
Did get to go over there and see the renovations. I'm hoping to have a video for you guys on YouTube at some point. I've had some technical issues with that, but I do have just some quick clips that I'm going to sort of, for those of you who are not on the podcast right now or actually watching on video, should be able to see. Hopefully this will work. But, dude, I really, first of all, I hate it for South Carolina and the fans that it's not going to be the normal unveiling that it would have been, because these are like first class renovations. And, you look, and as I get this rolling for y'all, you able to see that, Chris?
Yeah, I can see it. Very professional camera work. Look at you.
I was doing the pan. You see?
Yeah, a little pan. You got a little fade in there. Look at you.
Yeah, a little pan action, a little fade action. But you'll see, the thing I think that gets lost in this, I had one person on Twitter, basically, Chris, tell me that, well, good thing the rest of us fans will never get to see it. And, I get the sentiment, but at the same time, man,
sir,
these were these upgrades had to happen before they can upgrade other areas, I think.
Yeah.
South Carolina, I think at one point had the lowest number of club and premium seating areas, maybe next to like Vanderbilt in conference.
That's right.
And the thing about these are that over time they pay for themselves, right? So if you see the little sign here in the Cockaboose that will display different messages and stuff.
Yep.
I thought this was pretty sweet. But so Cockaboose Club, 2001 Club, Traditions Club, got a chance to see it all. And essentially, these are going to let everybody kind of upgrade the premium areas. And then over time, this actually helps with the foot traffic in the regular areas, helps with the concessions, the bathrooms, stuff like that in the regular stadium areas. And then down the road, there's going to be a lot of upgrades to those areas as well. Ribbon boards will be up at some point in the future, not this year. But I think when you look at facilities at South Carolina, there was really a lot that was lacking if you go back 10, 15 years. And they're finally at that point, dude, where I think they're catching up. You look at the football ops, look at the indoor facilities. Now you look at the premier areas here and the club areas, the premium areas, I should say. And it finally maybe is at a situation where South Carolina's caught up with some other SEC programs.
Yeah, it's been a gradual thing. And we saw the thing that always comes to mind for me, Wes, was, and it may be a sensitive subject still for some, but, South Carolina's ticket prices, for example, were so low. And to do these types of upgrades that you're seeing, obviously big private donations are very important, but the revenue was just not there to upgrade the facilities, which are very important. People are going to continuously be coming out with new stuff. Every school is going to come out with something new every year. And it's a facility sort of arms race, but you got to try to keep up. I mean, that's just the way it is. And South Carolina has really, in the past, they've been hurt, with the lack of facilities. Those things are important. You got to have it as a baseline, right? Some people say, well, it's not that important, but it is. You've got to have these things in a baseline, and then you got to go out and do all the other things. But what you hit on with the premium seating, is huge. Other schools have stuff like this. They're still way behind on, for example, the luxury boxes. And Steve Eigenborough talked about that today, with how they're going to have to continue to build that up. And like you said, Wes, it's sort of one piece at a time, right? I mean, they've got to do stuff like this and then do more in the future. I think you mentioned your stat was exactly right about South Carolina. Having, I think it's like 18 boxes, I think, premium boxes. I think Mississippi State has like 54 or something, which is a high number. But when you look at, I mean, revenue's a driver. And so a lot of people do get upset, which I understand, about sort of catering to a high dollar, people are coming to the games, but it's very important because that type of stuff, drives your revenue in your department and you need it. And look, South Carolina, I know football program results or whatever sport you want to talk about, but the athletic department has operated in the black, which has been, I think there's only about 25 departments or so in the country that do that. Mm-hmm. And so I say all that to say your revenue streams and all that are very important. And so you got to keep that up, and facilities is how you do, that's how you accomplish some of that, and creating more premium seating is going to help with that.
Yeah. And like I said, I think that will help with other areas, ultimately getting them upgraded as well. And they showed us so much stuff. It was honestly, it's amazing they did all that for quote only $22 million. I know to anybody, $22 million is a lot of money, but as far as renovations go and stuff like that, I mean, that's less than half of what the football ops building costs. So the amount of stuff they were able to do at that cost point, pretty impressive. And there's new stuff everywhere. All the different premium and club areas have been upgraded. The new recruiting area going to be really cool. That replaces the old weight room. And, I'll tell you what, the Logue seating, which, as Steve said, a weird word and hard to say, but if you got a chance to go hang out in the 2001 club and then sit right over the area where the team comes out, to me, that was the most – all the areas looked cool. Cockaboose Club, really cool. The way they tied it all in with Cockabooses, it has that theme to it. But watching a game in those 2001 seats, pretty awesome, because you have that sort of indoor area, but then you can go out and experience the actual, game day atmosphere as well. Plus, teams running out literally right beside you. Really, really sweet, I think, area there. Did have a question on here about seating capacity. Yes, it did drop down to around 77,000. And that's the trend, guys. I think as time goes on, you'll maybe see that number drop even more, because it's more towards putting the fans in a place where they're more comfortable. Some of the seating on the on the east side, that it's also the Logue seating. There are actually going to be little monitors that are basically iPad sized at every single seat, where you can either watch replays of Carolina's game, or you can put on other games if you want. So there's a lot to this thing, and can everybody afford to just go out and buy season tickets in these luxury areas? Maybe not, but hopefully over time, maybe for lesser games, hey, network and there's always a chance you can maybe get one from a buddy, experience it, and over time experience all these different areas, and just a different way to go to a football game, I think. So I'm excited, and I think long term there was some talk about getting, again, like I said, new ribbon boards. I think at some point, this wasn't really mentioned, but at some point you probably will see the other bathrooms renovated at Williams-Brice in the future. And then at some point there will be a step, I would think, where the north end zone gets some type of premium club luxury seating. I know that area already last year, some of it was sold as a way to watch the game as well, up above the student section. So that should be cool moving forward. But yeah, I'll post that video I just ran for everybody to be able to see it on our YouTube. But Yeah, it was cool. And again, I think that's just a step towards further, you know, renovations at Williams-Brice Stadium that maybe everybody can experience. And hey, Ray Tanner said that the big Gamecock statue will finally be completed soon.
There you
So
go.
I have what soon means.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Use the word soon.
Well, and it's been delayed, and there've been some delays for sure, but yeah, so that'll be cool. And I think, man, another thing in addition to needing to do these things is just when you're in an administration, you've got to continuously think about how can we make the game day experience better. And so these are the things they needed to do, like you said, before they can do the other things. And so people increasingly with technology at our fingertips and all the games televised, all that, they can say costs are getting higher. I can sit here with my bathroom and my TV and my fridge. So you got to find ways to be innovative in making the game day experience better. And there's no doubt that, and some of the people aren't having to pay a whole lot more from what they were to get into some of these new areas, right? From my understanding. So when you give somebody a chance to maybe pay a little bit more and have that type of experience, it's something that can certainly help the value proposition, so to speak. So,
yeah, and there are TVs everywhere in the stadium,
yeah,
and I think from the looks of it, there were areas, and it was even kind of hard to get your bearing about, okay, what did this used to be? Where am I standing? Because we walked all the way around the stadium, just about, but sort of on the inside, and you sort of lose your bearings of where you're at. But I'm pretty sure there are new TVs in areas that are not the premium areas as well. So there are some little upgrades. I think there was a new bathroom that is available for everybody, but also a bathroom that will lessen that on that same on that same east side, the east upper is going to benefit from their concessions and their bathrooms now not being used by a section that is now the upgraded premium and club seating. So there are, like I said, there's some real advantages to doing this that everybody will sort of see. I mean, you're not going to have those issues with 20,000 people anyway, but in 2021 and the future, you'll be in much better shape there. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it for today's show. Appreciate you joining us. Of course, GamecockCentral.com. Use the code Gamecocks for 50% off your first year. Use GC60 for a 60-day free trial. And you got anything else, Chris?
I was going to say, man, so they did, and this will be really brief. They did send out the little post-practice report from today, Thursday. Not much in it in terms of huge, heavy news, but Will Muschamp, the thing that I took away, moving towards another scrimmage type situation this week where they're going to put in a game plan as if they're going to play Tennessee. They're going to have a 7:30 kick, so to speak, for a scrimmage. Following week, they're going to do a noon kick, which is their second ball game. So that's really about it. Just continue working on more situational stuff. Try to plan it out as if they're having a game week as they prepare to play Tennessee.
Yeah, situational seems to be the word of the week. Lots of situational work for the Gamecocks. So please hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. For Chris, I'm Wes, and we will see you next time.